And wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm just getting the live stream up and running. Welcome. I am very happy that we're able to be together again. I really look forward to being able to spend some time exploring some of the different questions that are coming up for you throughout the month. And thank you for all who have gone ahead and sent me some questions ahead of time. Feel free if you'd like, if you are viewing through Zoom, you can go ahead and ask a question through the chat. I will be monitoring that from time to time and hopefully be able to address your questions as well. If you do have a question that comes in to this conversation, that may happen a little bit later into the hour. And if I don't get a chance to address it specifically this month, I will definitely be reaching out to you and connecting with you personally. And I'll also bring that question back next month as well. If you are new to my work, I'm Maryjo. I am the owner of Fourth Dimension Healing in Stillwater, Minnesota, where I offer energy healing and crystal healing courses and sessions, as well as I have an online school, which is the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies. Through my online school, I offer a wide variety of both free mini courses as well as fee-based courses in the area of energy healing and crystal healing. And I also have a crystal healer certification program. So if any of that sounds of interest, go ahead and check out the links below this YouTube, or also you can find that information at my website. So before I move into the questions that have been coming in this month, there is a follow-up question that I wanted to address that I was asked after the last video. Now, in my last month's video, I talked about how to work with gemstones and exactly what does that mean? And so the question was asked that this particular person has a number of strands of gemstones. That's how her mother actually collected them. And she's curious if she is able to wear those stones or work with those stones simply by using them as jewelry. And I would say yes. Now, there's always, of course, the time when we may wear some jewelry because we just want to wear that particular piece. And we're not necessarily really intentional about the kind of healing properties the gemstones and crystals may have as we're wearing them. And that's okay, because sometimes jewelry is just fun to wear. So for example, I'm wearing some lapis lazuli. I have a necklace of lapis lazuli, and also I have some lapis earrings in today. And I intentionally selected that for tonight because lapis is about clarity. And one of the things that I want to do in this next hour is to be very mindful of being able to respond to the questions that I'm asked by all of you in a way that is helpful so that my answers are clear and that you find some benefit in them. Now, another example of ways to bring crystal healing into day-to-day life, here is a very fun little stretchy bracelet. This happens to be made out of black tourmaline, which is a really earthy grounding stone. It's really great for clearing and clearing out the energy field of extra clutter. So that might be something that we could pop on because we feel like wearing a black bracelet that day, or we're intentionally wearing it. And then here's an example of a string of beads that is predominantly made up of carnelian. So we can bring in the carnelian properties of fire and of creativity and of motivation and work intentionally with that or not. So I definitely wanted to follow up with that, that great question that I was asked. Now, another thing I'd like to do is start with a question that I think in many ways has lots of depth to it. And so I'm going to go ahead and each of these questions that I received, I'm going to read them just the way I was given them. Here's our first question. I had a question about how to use crystal wands. I happen to have come into possession of two beautiful indigo gabbro wands but I am unsure where to begin for using them to either help balance myself or others. I was handed some meridian charts that were really complex and told to trace them. Could you suggest something a bit more simple to start with? Or is committing to meridian line tracing the best way to go about it? Well, before we get into the actual conversation around how to work with wands, there are two things that I'd like to talk about. One is you may not be familiar with indigo gabbro. So this is indigo gabbro. This is a stone that resonates with the storm element. And if you're not familiar with the system of elements that I work with crystal and energy healing practices, I work with earth, fire, water, wind, and storm. Now, storm is not an element, so to speak. However, it is an event that takes place when all the other elements are dynamically balanced. And so working with a storm element stone can be really helpful when we are in the process of going through transformation and lots is shifting in our lives. Indigo stones, and in this case, indigo gabbro, work very high up in the chakra system, the brow chakra and the crown chakra, and even above that in the higher chakras. And so they really do, it really does bring in a lot of high spiritual energy, a lot of insight, some of that more mysterious, hard to gather energy. And it brings it down into our physical body so that we can then sit with it and allow it to inform us and become more consciously aware of its messages. So that's indigo gabbro, and I definitely wanted to show you what that looked like. The other part of the question that I wanted to address is meridian lines. Now, not everybody knows what meridian lines are. And here's an example of a chart of some meridians. Now, the meridian system is part of the traditional Chinese medicine philosophy. And I like to think of meridians and the meridian system as a system of energetic pathways. And so whether we're working with chakras or those spinning vortex type of centers that run along the spine, or if we're working with the energy pathways or meridians that move throughout our body, all of that is part of our energy field. And the person who sent in this particular question is curious about how to work with wands and the meridian system. So for you who sent that in, I would say it sounds to me as if you are being invited into the work of meridians as part of the healing tradition that you are learning. And so I would say work with the meridian tracing because that's what you are being directed to do from your teacher. And also there are a lot of other ways to work with it. So I have a number of different wands that I brought today. And I just wanted to, first of all, show you what a wand is. So here's an example of a wand. This is a red Jasper wand. And you can see that Jasper has lots of different variations. I love this one because it's got some character to it. When you're working with a wand, most of the time there will be a tapered end and one that's not quite so tapered. The tapered end is the directional end where the energy is going to be coming out of. So when I work with a wand, I'm right hand dominant, so I'm going to hold it in my right hand, and you'll notice that my palm energy center is right here next to the end of that particular wand, so that I'm connecting the gemstone wand with my own energy system. So it's an extension of our energy field. I can be very intentional about directing energy either towards, or it could be away. If I wanted to, let's say I have a sore elbow, I want to actually direct my sore elbow's pain away, I could do that. When I work with a wand, sometimes I find myself moving it through the energy field or the space around a person's body. Sometimes I might find it directing at certain chakras. Sometimes I may find that I'm kind of opening things up in a clockwise or counterclockwise position. There are various ways that you can work with a wand. My recommendation is to trust your instinct. If you're, let's say, over that sore elbow and you're getting a sense that your hand wants to spin counterclockwise, then do that. If you get a sense that your hand wants to spin clockwise, then do that. If you've worked with me at all or listened to any of my videos, I really want to try and demystify this. It's not about doing it right. It's simply about being in resonance with your energy field, with the earth below, the sky above, and then being very heart-centered so that you can direct healing energy to yourself or another person. Keep in mind that if you're working with a red jasper wand, that will be for a different reason than you might indigo gabbro. Here is an example of a Septarian wand. Now, Septarian is known as a concretion stone. It is actually kind of fossilized and petrified gunk from the bottom of a lake bed. I love it because, again, it's got a lot of character. It has calcite, it has calcitity, and it has aragonite. So for this one, because I know something about Septarian, and I know this is a fire element stone, I can work with this particular wand if I'm working on an area or an issue that might be arising for me or for somebody else that may have to do with fiery types of situations. And if you're not, or if you're interested in learning more about what each of those elements really is about, I've got videos. So just go ahead and check out my channel because I have various ones for the different elements. The red jasper is an earth element stone. So this is going to be fabulous for working with a grounding energy of the earth. This is a little bit more fiery. Here is an example of a piece of selenite. Now, this is a wonderful wand to use. Now, in this case, both ends are fairly blunt. So you get to decide if this is the wand you're working with. You can decide which is going to be the end that I am considering that kind of outflow point, and which end is going to be more of that blunt end that I'm going to keep at my hand, depending on if you're left or right hand dominant. Again, you can work with it this way. You can work, a wand can go this way and clear. I personally find that a wand this long is a little long for me because I kind of tend to potentially bump into a person. You may love this. They make some of, sometimes these selenite wands, because you can get them very, very long and yet thin enough to be able to function as a really nice wand. Here is a fun one. This is a piece of zebra calcite, a natural occurring shaped wand. The same thing again. This is kind of stormy. Actually works with all of the energy fields. And so this would be fabulous if you are wanting to do some clearing throughout your entire energy field. Again, simply holding it, directing it, either way. Here is a small fluorite tower that actually I often use as a wand. Fluorite is a wind element stone. Lots of clearing can be done with this, especially I found it really works nicely if somebody's having migraines or other visual issues or a lot of pressure and stress that they're experiencing in their head. This is a great way to do that. Just like I'm wearing lapis, here is a lapis wand. And this is a little bit easier to see, a very clear termination. Now this one's been hand polished and hand shaped. This one is natural. Doesn't matter if it's been shaped by hand or that's how it came out of the earth. They still work effectively. And here's that blunt end. Sometimes what you can do with a wand is actually with that termination point. You can maybe put it at the top of your head if you're laying down, with that point or termination pointing down if you're really inviting energy from that spirit realm down. Could be that you flip it over and have that blunt end next to your head so that you're helping to clear and release maybe a headache, something like that. Here is a natural piece of quartz that's very much in that wand shape. Again, beautiful. Here is a large wand. While they're both quartz, there's going to be a lot of energy here. So be mindful of how much energy do you need to bring into the situation. Less is more. So you can tend to work with a smaller stone and be very, very effective. Here's another example of a piece of blue kyanite, a natural blade that happens for me to be a perfect fit, and I use it as a wand a lot. So many of the stones that you see me bring to these various Q&As are stones that I work with every day in my healing practice. I think it's important for you to see hands-on what a crystal toolkit can look like. And you will notice that many of my stones are fairly small because it's not comfortable having a really big piece of rock resting on your body when you're having a crystal healing session. So I hope that that gives you an idea of how you can work with wands. I do have a video specific about wands as well, and so you can look for that. Here is another question. I believe you said in one of your videos that clear quartz can help enhance or magnify the properties of another gemstone. Are there other stones that work well together? That is a fabulous question, because there are so many stones that can work really well together. And it can be kind of confusing because we're not always sure what we've got going on. So rather than piling a whole bunch of stones together, I think it is helpful to select a few to work with. One of the things that I do prior to a crystal healing session is I'm very intentional about having stones that are selected for a particular reason. And I typically am getting that information intuitively. I'm not just standing in front of a bunch of gemstones and crystals and thinking with my thinking brain, but rather I'm shifting into a place where I can be more intuitive about it. When it comes to working together with stones, I think it's helpful to think about the properties of the stones. If you are looking for a way to bring some grounding into your life, and also, let's say, you're feeling kind of like you need an overall healing, you're just feeling kind of overall unsettled, I would think a really great combination could be to start with Shungite. Now there are different kinds of Shungite. This is considered type 2 Shungite, which is about 50% carbon and 50% other minerals. Shungite resonates with the earth element, and it is a very, very, very strong earth stone. And so anytime you're working with any kind of a stone, if you can bring a piece of Shungite or perhaps a piece of black tourmaline that you might have, because that's an earth stone. We already mentioned that when we were talking about the bracelet. Bringing the Shungite into combination with another stone can be very effective. Here is an example of charoite. Charoite is a stone that resonates with wind. In my experience, there's a bit of storm in it also, yet it's very comprehensive. It's a very holistic stone. Working with these two together can bring that kind of comprehensive, holistic healing and really ground it. To work with these together, It could be that you want to lay down and rest or meditate or even sit in a chair with a stone in one hand and a stone in the other. I would say if you're feeling that you are working on anchoring the properties of, in this case, the charoite, put that grounding earth shungite in your non-dominant hand. If you're feeling like you really want to bring in the properties of the charoite and very gently kind of nestle it in, flip it around so that the primary stone you're working with is in your non-dominant hand. That would be my recommendation. Now, there are all kinds of different ways to work with stones in unison. Certainly, we have the clear quartz, which amplifies all of the other stones. It also is a member of the quartz family, and here's another member of the quartz family. This is a piece of Tibetan quartz. You can notice how dark it is. Tibetan quartz is very often also known as black quartz. It has lots of occlusions or inclusions in it, and it's very high frequency, just like its cousin over here. And then perhaps we can bring in a piece of K2, which is another transformational stone. Now, K2 is unique, and I have a video on K2 because K2 can help really reestablish balance throughout the entire energy field. And so working with these two together is really exponentiating the amount of vibrational field energy and balance that's taking place because you have paired up the K2 with a strong quartz. Really, any stone can be combined. The more you work with stones, the more you'll get an idea that, ooh, this doesn't quite feel right. And while I say that, I'd like to point something out. Let's say I picked up this piece of blue kyanite, and I'm working with it, I'm holding it, I'm meditating it, and all of a sudden I feel like, ooh, I don't feel very good. I feel like I'm kind of irritated right now. Two things. You can set the stone down because it just triggered some stuff for you. And you can know that that's the stone that you're going to want to work with for a while because it is triggering some of that blocked and bogged down energy that's ready to be shifted and cleared. When we're working with a stone, it doesn't always have to feel lovely and wonderful and calm and soothing, although sometimes it does. It can kind of push our buttons, so to speak. And as soon as that happens, set the stone aside because you don't need the stone anymore. It's been a catalyst for you, because you're the healer. It's been a catalyst for you to be able to shift and move into a place where you can declog and declutter and clear your energy field. So I hope that was helpful in allowing you to venture out and try some different combinations. If you have some stones that you're not sure exactly which elements they align with, and go ahead and go out to my website, look up the stones that you have, and you can read about each of the properties of those stones. And if you have a stone that you're not seeing on my website, just send me a chat. I'd be happy to help you sort out what that stone might be about so that you can work with it more effectively. Here is a good question. This question says, I love hunting for agates. Are they a gemstone that I can use for healing? Well, I would say two things, yes and yes. So the first thing that jumps out at me is that you're hunting for a stone and the stone finds you and you have already created a relationship with that stone. That is definitely the stone that you're going to want to work with for a while. Sometimes we can get almost a little too involved with all the beautiful gemstones and crystals that are available to us, and we miss the stones that are on the path of life. So I would say any of those agates are just as powerful as any other healing stone. Agates are made out of silicon dioxide. Agates are quartz. And other minerals have washed into them, and various pressures have created them to be beautiful and wildly imaginative. One of the common agates that sometimes we forget is an agate is carnelian. Sometimes you can almost see through a piece of carnelian, and sometimes they're very, very, very orange red. So carnelian is fiery, and yet not all agates are going to be fiery. Here are two examples of green moss agate. This one you can see very white, kind of creamy. I'm not sure if you can see those. Sometimes the camera doesn't focus very well. Here's another example of a green moss agate. So just as I was talking about, I'm looking for my stone that I was, oh, here it is. Just as I was talking about the rainforest jasper having that mossy, green, nurturing energy, so does the green moss agate. So take a look at the agate or agates that you have found. What colors are they? Hold that and kind of just move through your body. Scan from your feet to the top of your head, taking some time to notice, is there a part of your body that's actually inviting that frequency, those healing properties at an energetic level to move into your body from that agate? So color can be helpful. You can work with the darker colors of black and browns and reds. Those can be very earthy. Or you can also recognize that sometimes you may resonate with a very dark agate that really wants to resonate up at the top of your head. So again, there are no hard and fast rules. It's about you developing a relationship with that crystal stone spirit within the stone. My sense is that everything on the planet is sentient. It certainly is not sentient the way we are, yet there is a connection that we have with them. Every element, every chemical, every mineral that we can find within nature is within us. And so we can recognize that sometimes the calcium in a stone is resonating with the calcium within our own body. So you can really explore things. Here's another example, kind of on the theme of jewelry and wearing crystals. This is a bracelet of like a black agate. It's just lovely, very grounding, very nurturing. And so I would say explore the stones that are rising to your awareness. And I would love to hear back from you. If you were the one that submitted that question, feel free to reach out to me. And we can always explore more about what are the properties that you're picking up from that particular stone, because that can be really powerful. Here's another question. I have heard you talk about creating a crystal grid for a room. Is this something that is easy to do? And if so, how would I start? So there's a lot in that question. I do have a video on my YouTube channel that you can take a look at about how to create a small crystal grid. But this question is specific about how do we grid a room? I would say there are a couple things that we can do. And one, we can think about the geometry that we would like to bring into a space. And by geometry, I'm thinking particularly of a term called sacred geometry. Sacred geometry refers to the recurring geometric patterns that we find in nature. It could be the spiral, anywhere from a galaxy forming all the way through a fern unfurling. And here in the Northern Hemisphere, spring is very close. So we are going to be able to start seeing a lot of that spiraling sacred geometry pattern unfurling literally in front of our eyes very soon, one can hope. It could be that we are talking about some of the more hexagonal patterns that show up in snowflakes, in water when it freezes. So water is unique in that it is liquid, yet it is a crystal when it is frozen. And so when we take a look at how to grid a room, we can work with gemstones and crystals that not only can be laid out in the room to create a particular geometrical pattern, but also we can take a look at the geometry of the stones themselves. And my sense is that when we can pair up the internal crystalline structure of a stone with the layout, the actual geometrical layout, it can be really powerful. So I wanted to show you a couple examples here. I would say one of the simplest and most profound ways to create a crystal grid in a room is to work with black tourmaline and either quartz or selenite. And the beauty of these is all of these stones are relatively inexpensive and they're very abundant. So it's easy to find them. So here is a piece of black tourmaline. Again, notice it's not super big. I mean, we definitely can find a chunk. And I would say if you want to grid a house and you want to grid a house from the outside, then it would benefit you to be able to really look for some big chunks of black tourmaline. The reality is that's kind of difficult and it might be cost prohibitive to find them. And then with shipping the way it is, it might just be out of your budget. So you can bring the stones inside and then you can grid rooms instead. So black tourmaline is a wonderful stone to work with. And I'm also going to show you another piece of quartz. Now, this piece of quartz is a good representation of the hexagonal crystalline structure that a piece of quartz has. And you'll often see natural points that have 6 sides. They're not always going to be the same. That's okay. They all will tend to come to 6 points or 6 sides, 1 point. If this gets chipped off, it's not a big deal. The entire crystal has this lattice that atom upon atom upon atom aligns into this crystalline structure. Black tourmaline also is hexagonal. If we looked at this crystalline structure under a microscope, we would see that same hexagonal crystalline structure. And so by pairing these 2 stones that have that hexagonal structure with a pattern that creates 6-sided grids, that's going to be a lot of power. If you were to visit me at my my healing space, my healing office, I actually have 2 grids that are made out of quartz and black tourmaline. Underneath the healing table itself, I have a dish about this big, and I have it filled with sand. Sand also is silicon dioxide. And I have 6 clear quartz and 6 black tourmaline, and they are set so that they are pointing up and down. Actually up, because the ones I have are just, they only have one termination. They're considered single termination. And so they're sitting in the sand in 2 concentric rings right under the center of my healing table. That creates a primary grid. So that means that above my table, about 4 feet or so, is another grid that consists of these properties. And then also it goes down. That's the primary grid. The secondary grid that I have, and you would have to come into my office and you would actually have to start snooping around in corners. You will see that in the 4 corners and then 2 sides with each of these various groupings of stones, they are equidistant equally spaced. I have more of the same. I have double terminated in that point where we have points down and up in sand. And then I have a larger piece of black tourmaline, again, in 6 different places. That's my secondary grid. What that does is actually grids the entire room above and actually my neighbor below, who doesn't even know that I've got the whole space gridded in that corner of our building. This is a real simple way to set the intention to place some of these stones in the corners of your rooms, or it could be that you'd like to lay them perhaps along the windowsill. Now, one thing that I also would recommend is rather than working with the quartz, work with some selenite. And again, this is not a big piece of selenite. This is a bigger piece of selenite, and you could certainly work with this. The hesitancy I have with working with lots of selenite around windows is that selenite has a Mohs hardness factor of 2, and it is very, very soft. And the Mohs hardness factor is a scale that ranges from 1 to 10, with diamond being 10 and talc being 1. So this is really soft and this is going to get mushy. And so if you're going to keep this around your windows, I would say just make sure that you are paying attention if you have a lot of condensation coming in, especially as the seasons are changing, or if you leave your windows open when it rains because you'd like to get some of that fresh, beautiful air in. Just know that if your selenite is going to be getting wet, that's going to get kind of mushy and it won't be very helpful. So my recommendation would be put some of this in the corners of your room. Now that's if we're working with a hexagonal grid and, you know, hexagonal gemstones. It could be that you really want to feel some solidifying, grounding kind of energy. Then you could take, I don't actually have a piece of it with me right now as I think about it, but you could take a piece of pyrite, which is fool's gold, which would be a really wonderful stone that you could put a piece in 4 corners. You could put them on the 4 corners of your bed, right underneath the bed. And that's real stabilizing and grounding because pyrite is a isometrically, has an isometric crystalline structure, which means it grows in squares. Here's an example of fluorite. This also is a isometric structured crystal. So just as an example, it's not always going to look like a piece of square rock. That would be my recommendation. The other thing you can think about is, what is my intention for this grid? And if it is, perhaps you've been having trouble sleeping, or there's been a lot of, maybe you have a relative or a dear friend who's ill and you're very worried and it's been very hard to sleep. Perhaps bringing some rose quartz, which is a lovely, soothing, wonderful stone, and placing some of that in the 4 corners of your bedroom. or perhaps one directly beneath where your pillow is. There are all kinds of ways that you can bring crystals into the intentional functioning of how to work with a room. I remember once a student asked me, how many stones do I need to have to make a grid? And I said, really, just one, because all we want is that anchoring stone, that point of what is the intention of that grid. And so for me in my office, I have the intention being a space of clearing and healing energies underneath my healing table, and then also throughout the room. If you grid your entire room, any other smaller grids that you may decide to create are simply going to be manifested even more and amped up even more effectively, because they will be the primary grids, and then this large room space that you've gridded is your secondary grid. So I hope that that helps you understand that a little bit. Again, reach out to me with questions that you may have. You may have a variety of stones already that you'd really like to work with, and you're just not sure how to do that. Here is a great question. And the beauty of this question is that it moves crystal healing out of the realm of us thinking we know how it works. And here's the question. Can I use gemstones on my pet? If so, my dog has a lot of separation anxiety, and I'm wondering what gemstone would be best and how to work with it, and how would I use it? Sometimes people will ask me, does this work? Oh, I apologize. Does this work? And I say, you know what? It works on animals, and it works in a lot of ways that are beyond our way of understanding the functioning of the science behind it. So let's just trust and allow the vibrations to help. So when I think of separation anxiety, there are two things going on. There is this need for belonging, this need for safety, and then there's also an overactive nervous system that really is in the process of trying to rebalance. And there are some times when our energy field is distressed enough, it is just not going to correct itself on its own. And here we're hearing of a dog that's experiencing separation anxiety, and this dog's best friend really wanting to reach out and figure out how they can be of help. So a couple of stones come to mind for addressing the healing properties. One is Shungite again. Now, there are two forms of Shungite. This is type 2 Shungite. I like type 2 a lot for this kind of use because it's durable. It's about 50% carbon, but it has other minerals. It gives it some more strength and stability. Elite Shungite has a lot of different positive qualities, but it is not it's not a stone that's going to hold up with a lot of tumbling around. So stick with regular Shungite. You also may want to consider Smoky Quartz. This is another member of the quartz family. If I had to give a key word or a keynote to Smoky Quartz, it would be grounding. It has this very strong kind of gentle yet persistent energy that stabilizes. There are other earth stones that are much more kind of boom and really get a person back present, but this is a long, subtle, yet deliberate grounding energy. So working with an earth stone, and then working with a stone perhaps such as lepidolite, which is a wonderful stone when working with anxiety. It is so important when our nervous system is overstimulated and we are kind of locked into a fight, flight, freeze, that we help that nervous system rebalance. The nervous system is only going to either be in fight, flight, freeze, or it's going to be in calm and relaxed. It cannot be in both at the same time. And so what we can do through the work of a grounding stone is to help, in this case, this beloved dog, to be able to get some of that earth energy into their energy field, and then supplement it with a stone that can be really beneficial for calming down that mid part, that limbic part of the brain. Another example would be a piece of green moss agate. Here we've got this earth element, very, very deliberate earth, and also there's some water, and water is about helping to calm down the emotions. So I would say either lepidolite or green moss agate, and then an earth stone. Maybe you have a favorite stone that you found when you were on a walk, and it looks like maybe part granite and part feldspar, and it looks like it's black or brown. That may be your grounding stone. You don't necessarily have to run out and get a new stone. You may want to because of its properties, but you don't have to. I brought this because I wanted to show you this also is a piece of smoky quartz. So smoky quartz, the color ranges quite widely from almost clear all the way through darker than this. Now, be mindful of smoky quartz. There are some smoky quartz pieces out there available for purchase that have actually been irradiated to make them look really, really dark. And not only do we not want to just bring that into our environment, it also, unfortunately, through that process has destroyed the ability for that stone to function the way it originally did. So know where you get your stones from. Know that the person you're getting your stones from can trace them back to their source, if at all possible. And while I'm thinking of this, I wanted to let you know that ultimately, all of these stones know how to reset their own energetic pattern. We don't need to do anything overly fancy to help clear them, with the exception that if you have a piece of irradiated quartz, I would say don't work with that at all. That may be something that you want to just set aside. So these are the stones. And now the question also goes on to ask, so how would I use these stones? Well, there are a couple things. Now, this is an example of a bag that might be okay to use if you have a large dog. You can get all kinds of little pouches like this pretty easily, but it's an example I wanted to show you where, let's say we're going to put the lepidolite and the smoky quartz, and now we're going to tie that up, or we're going to slip that over the dog's collar. We're going to go for a walk, and we're going to help this puppy get used to this little bag of stone spirits that are going to be able to help. The other thing you could do is consider, is there a place where this dog likes to rest? Maybe they have a bed or some kind of a pillow. You can slip that underneath the entire dog bed if that's what you're using. If you have a large pillow that has a pillowcase, slip it right inside the pillowcase. Whatever you can do to help these stones stay within the energy field of that dog for as much as possible, I think that would be really great. The interesting thing that would be fun for you to notice is, as you have those stones placed, let's say over by their dog bed, in time, what are you noticing? Are they calmer? Are they wanting to, do they find the little bag and start nudging it around and start playing with it? Animals are very intuitive and can be very keen on some of the frequencies that they're picking up on that they may find helpful, and sometimes also the ones that they're not needing any longer. Just like you pick up that piece of blue kyanite and you go, whoop, I don't need that anymore. It's because it's done its work. In my crystal healing sessions, it's not uncommon for a stone or two to roll off the placement where it has been laid simply because it's the energy field and the stone's way of saying, thank you, I don't need your frequencies anymore. So I hope that that was helpful for that. Now, I had another question that came up about what is the difference between all these tiger's eyes and what is tiger iron? And I can appreciate that that can be really confusing. So what I wanted to do is, first of all, show you a picture, or not a picture, a piece of golden tiger's eye. When we think of tiger's eye, often this golden version is the one that pops into our mind first. To me, tiger's eye has sun energy, and it helps to bring that fiery sun energy down, and it connects with earth and helps bring earth energy up. Tiger's eye resonates with both earth element and the fire element. So it can be really helpful anytime we're working with our physical, emotional, and mental aspects of our day-to-day life. Because those physical, emotional, and mental aspects of day-to-day life have to do with our root, or that first energy center, our second energy center, and our third energy center. So it's the root chakra, the sacral chakra is the second, and our solar plexus is the third. So anytime we're working with those three energy centers, it's simply that we are addressing issues that are arising in human life. This is actually quartz. It also is silicon dioxide. So again, quartz is not always going to look like this. Quartz is the most abundant mineral throughout the world. It not only shows up literally as quartz, it shows up, as we heard earlier, in agates. It shows up in many, many, many stones. So here is the golden tiger's eye, and then there is red tiger's eye. Again, it has to do with the additional minerals that are in it. So you can see that if we're working with the colors of the chakras and that red root energy center, that lowest one that drops right off the tailbone and connects with the earth, that's red. So you can see working with this red tiger's eye could be really beneficial. There is a variety of tiger's eye known as blue tiger's eye, also known as hawk's eye. And here, again, the additional minerals, in addition to the silicon dioxide, bring properties that align higher up in the energy field, that throat, that brow, that crown. So I find working, for example, with blue tiger's eye, as we're working on perhaps concentrating and clearing and getting our head kind of focused so that we can perhaps be effective at work, or maybe we have a project at home that we're trying to work on, what we can do is we can bring in something like a blue tiger's eye that brings that clarity in this space, yet it drops it all the way down into those lower chakras as well. Because anytime we receive vibrations and energy coming down from that spiritual realm, in order for us to really benefit from them, we need to embody that so that we can have it accessible to us in our day-to-day life. Otherwise, it's just some lovely little experience we had, and then we go on with life and we continue to be unbalanced. Now, the other question that arose is, what is tiger iron? So tiger's iron is tiger's eye with hematite, which is silver, and my apologies, I meant to bring it and I didn't. And so it's the tiger's eye, the golden tiger's eye, with hematite and the red jasper. So together, this brings in this powerful anchoring earth energy of hematite and red jasper, along with some of the more fiery tiger's eye. So this is by far one of my favorite stones to work with when we are really working with physical shifting that needs to take place, and it needs to take place both at a physical and a mental level. That third chakra, that upper abdomen chakra, is about processing and thinking. Research is helping us understand that just like we have a brain up here, we have a gut brain. And so the more we recognize that we have a lot of processing and thinking and that goes on in that third chakra that needs to be grounded in order to really benefit from it, that's where a simple example of tiger's iron can be really helpful. And again, these stones are very accessible. They are relatively inexpensive. And so it's very easy to build a toolkit, for lack of a better word, with how to be able to begin to bring some stones together to support the healing that's arising. Because you may be working on physical healing for a while and then shift to something that's more mental, or it could be spiritual and you're feeling a disconnect. And we all have to face it that COVID the last 2 years has been really hard. It's been hard physically, it's been hard on relationships. And so many of us are really wanting to get back out and get connected with other people. And that is so vital for what holistic healing is about. So I would like to say that we have had some really fabulous questions come up this month. I hope that as you have listened, you've not only had some questions that you may have had yourself answered, but also perhaps a bit of inquisitiveness about, I wonder how I can be more intentional about working with that particular stone that's been sitting on my kitchen windowsill, or it's been on my dresser, or it's been over on that counter for a while. Notice the stones that you're drawn to, and then explore their properties. And the best way to do that is simply by picking the stone up, becoming quiet, and noticing what are you, how is it interacting with your energy field? What is helpful? What is not helpful? And very slowly, we begin to be able to recognize that working with gemstones and crystals, it's not complicated. It doesn't need to be overly burdensome. It can be as simple as choosing to slip on a little bracelet of a particular stone because we are intentionally working with that stone, and then going about our day, being mindful and paying attention to how that stone is informing us to become more balanced, more whole, and more complete in body, mind, and spirit. So as other questions may pop up for you in the upcoming weeks, feel free to send me a chat. You can do that right through my website. And if I'm online, I might actually respond back right away. I have links to my online school where I do offer some free videos. They're kind of mini courses to help get you started on energy healing and crystal healing and how you are ready to bring it even more intentionally into your life. So thanks again for joining me. I look forward to next month. Let me double check. That date is going to be Wednesday, April 20th at 6 p.m. Central Time. And you can join Zoom if you want to ask questions. You can always watch a live stream through my YouTube channel. And I will be posting this video live for the public in the coming days as well. So I wish you well, many blessings.